Why do we love true crime? Whether it's podcasts, documentaries, or TV shows, we just can't seem to get enough of it. We binge-watch the latest Netflix docuseries about serial killers, obsess over cold cases, and dive deep into true crime forums online. But why? What's the appeal of these dark stories? Why do we feel this pull towards something so morbid, so unsettling? Let's start with the basics. True crime triggers something primal in us. It's thrilling, and that thrill, oddly enough, comes from fear. We're not watching just for the facts of the crime, we're watching for the fear. But this isn't the same kind of fear you'd feel in a real-life dangerous situation. It's a safe fear. We get to feel that rush of adrenaline, knowing full well we're sitting on our couch under a blanket with a bowl of popcorn. In that moment, we're in control. But here's where it gets even more interesting. This thrill is actually ancient. It's tied to something called vicarious fear, an evolutionary response that dates back to when our ancestors were learning how to survive in a dangerous world. Back then, learning about danger was key to survival. We'd hear stories of attacks, wild animals, or enemy tribes, and by hearing those stories, we'd learn. The more terrifying, the more memorable, and the more likely you were to survive by avoiding those situations. In a way, listening to true crime stories today is a modern version of that ancient survival mechanism. It's why, even though true crime stories can be terrifying, we want to keep watching, but fear is just the beginning of the story. At the heart of every true crime story is a mystery, a puzzle. And as humans, we love puzzles. Think about it. Every episode of a true crime podcast or documentary builds this narrative arc that draws you in. We start with a crime, a sense of chaos and disorder. Then there's an investigation. The detectives, the witnesses, the twists and turns. And finally, we reach a conclusion. Hopefully, justice is served. It's not just the mystery, though. It's the idea of justice. As much as we're fascinated by the crime itself, we're equally captivated by the journey to restore order. We want to see the system work. We want to see the bad guy get caught, and we want closure. Even when the system fails, we're hooked, trying to figure out what went wrong, who's to blame and why. And that desire for justice? It's deeply tied to another reason we love true crime. This one's a little darker, but stay with me. There's a reason we're drawn to the most brutal, the most violent, the most gruesome crimes. And no, it's not because we're secretly monsters. It's because we're curious, morbidly curious. Humans have always been fascinated by death, destruction, and violence, but that fascination doesn't necessarily mean we enjoy these things. It's more about trying to understand them. Morbid curiosity helps us confront the dark sides of human nature, the parts of ourselves we don't fully understand. We want to know how a person could commit such a terrible act. What drives someone to murder? Could it be prevented? What does that say about us? It's a way of grappling with the unknown. When we hear about a serial killer or a cold case, we're not just trying to solve the mystery, we're trying to solve human nature. Before we dive even deeper into the psychology behind true crime, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And hey, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. Now back to the dark side of curiosity. Life can be, well, pretty boring sometimes. And it's no secret that true crime offers an escape from the monotony of our everyday lives. We spend our days dealing with the routine, work, school, chores, errands. But true crime, it takes us out of that. It's a glimpse into a world that's so different from our own, a world of high stakes, drama, and danger. And while it may seem counterintuitive, immersing ourselves in these dark stories can actually be a way of coping with stress. True crime makes us feel more alive, more alert, and in some strange way, it reminds us that our lives, no matter how stressful or mundane, are safe. It's a reminder of what we have to be grateful for. We can escape into these stories, feel the rush of danger, but then walk away unscathed. Finally, we need to talk about the victims. True crime isn't just about the killers. In fact, a huge part of the appeal is about understanding the victims' stories. When we listen to true crime, we're often hearing the voices of those who can't speak for themselves, the victims and their families. We learn about their lives, their struggles, their dreams, before it was all taken away. In some way, consuming true crime helps keep their stories alive. It can inspire us to seek justice for those who can't fight for themselves or bring attention to unsolved cases. We feel empathy, outrage, and sometimes hope. True crime, at its core, isn't just about the darkness. It's about shining a light on it. It's about understanding what went wrong and what we can do to prevent it from happening next time. One final piece of the puzzle is catharsis, that sense of release we get after watching or listening to a harrowing true crime story. But why do we feel this emotional release after immersing ourselves in such dark, grim narratives? In many ways, true crime provides us with a safe space to confront our own fears and anxieties. We explore the worst possible scenarios, but we do it from a distance. We're not in danger, but we still get to confront those uncomfortable feelings. And when the story ends, whether there's justice or not, there's a sense of relief that our lives are still intact. It's almost like going through an emotional roller coaster, but without the real-life consequences. We experience fear, anger, sadness, and then finally, calm. It's the same reason people love horror movies or roller coasters. It's an emotional journey. So when you finish that documentary or podcast episode and feel that odd sense of calm afterward, it's not weird. It's a release, a catharsis. So why do we keep coming back to true crime time and time again? It's a mix of things. The thrill of fear, the satisfaction of solving a mystery, the curiosity about human nature, the empathy we feel for the victims, the escape from everyday life, and the emotional release we get at the end of the story. True crime taps into so many different aspects of our psychology. It's not just one thing, it's the combination of everything. And that's why we're fascinated by it. We're constantly searching for answers, to the crime, to human nature, and to ourselves. True crime gives us a way to explore all of those questions, and even though the answers aren't always clear, the journey keeps us hooked. But as much as we enjoy it, it's important to remember that these are real stories with real people involved. The fascination is natural, but respect for the victims and their families is crucial. And that's something we should always keep in mind as we dive into the dark world of true crime. So, why do we love true crime? It's a complex mix of psychology, emotion, and curiosity. Whether it's the thrill, the mystery, or the empathy, it speaks to something deep within us. True crime may be dark, but it also helps us understand ourselves and the world around us just a little bit better. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the fascinating world of true crime. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.